the Miami-based civil litigation firm Beckenley Trial Lawyers has announced that they will be representing nearly 100 Bernie Sanders supporters as plaintiffs in a major class action lawsuit against the DNC. Now, this comes after the DNC hack, which revealed collusion between the DNC and Hillary Clinton's campaign. So the plaintiffs are suing over the collusion, which violates DNC rules. Now, US Uncut writes, anyone who donated to the DNC after Bernie Sanders entered the race for the Democratic nomination, either directly or indirectly through third-party payment platforms like ActBlue, is eligible to join the lawsuit, along with anyone who donated to Bernie Sanders' campaign throughout the course of the primaries and caucuses. According to Jared Beck, an attorney in the case, no venue has yet been picked to file the lawsuit, which he expects to be officially filed early next week to allow for a hearing before the Democratic National Convention on July 25th. Under federal law, the DNC, as a defendant in a class action lawsuit, has 20 days to respond upon being served. So in effect, the plaintiffs in this case, which are Bernie Sanders supporters, are suing because they feel defrauded because they donated money to a candidate that they believed in a process that was inherently unfair from the very beginning, before Bernie Sanders even announced that he was going to run for president. Now, the overall goal is to win financial compensation for Bernie Sanders supporters and also to compel the DNC to change the way in which it conducts business. No more collusion, no more false neutrality. They actually have to be fair, as their own charter mandates. Now, the attorneys contend that the DNC can respond in several different ways. So they can either issue a motion to dismiss the case altogether, or they can move to stay the case, which will most likely be what they do, so that way they can postpone it until after the November election. Now, according to Article 5, Section 4 of the Charter and bylaws of the Democratic Party, it requires neutrality from the DNC and the DNC chair, but obviously that wasn't the case. No matter how much Debbie Do Anything for Hillary Wasserman Schultz contends that she was neutral, we all know that wasn't the case at all. Now, US Uncut continues, a fraud lawsuit is justified due to multiple actions taken by DNC chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who served as co-chair of Clinton's 2008 campaign. Wasserman Schultz repeatedly claimed neutrality through the primary season, despite numerous allegations from the Sanders campaign and national media that she tipped the scales in Clinton's favor throughout the Democratic primary, most notably by scheduling the debates during low viewership time slots and by shutting down the Sanders campaign's access to its voter file database for 24 hours. And these are things we've been complaining about as Bernie Sanders supporters since it happened. It's been inherently unfair, and I think that this lawsuit is absolutely justified. Now, the question is, how can you get involved in the case, and how can you benefit from it? Well, the lawyers explain that you don't necessarily have to do anything. So the lawyers will be arguing that Bernie Sanders supporters who donated to him represent a type of class. Now, the court has to determine whether or not they actually will deem Bernie Sanders supporters as a class, but if so, then anyone who donated to him could benefit from this lawsuit. So in the end, not everyone needs to be a literal plaintiff in this case. You could still reap the rewards of the case just by being a Bernie Sanders supporter who donated. Now, there are approximately 2 million people that donated, over $22 million in donations. So that is a lot of people. So if it is the case that this lawsuit is successful, the DNC will be paying a lot of people money. Now, to give you guys an example of how this would work, I actually benefited from a class action lawsuit against Sony PlayStation. So in 2012, they were sued for false advertising over the release of their handheld system, the PlayStation Vita. And anyone who purchased a PlayStation Vita before a certain date, they were involved in the class action lawsuit. And since I had purchased the PlayStation Vita before the date specified, well, I actually received a check of $25. So I would imagine that anyone involved in this case who donated to Bernie Sanders before a certain date, before the hack that revealed collusion between the DNC and Clinton's campaign, I'd imagine that you would be mailed a check as well, or receive some type of monetary compensation in some way. So that's not guaranteed. Of course, they have to be successful, but I think that that's how this would happen if it is the case that they do win. Now, irrespective of the financial compensation that you might receive due to this case, I think that the actual importance of the overall case and what it would mean for the DNC and forcing them to change, well, that's more important, and I can't overstate that enough. I think that the DNC can no longer continue to be corrupt, to be biased against anyone who's anti-establishment. They just can't. Otherwise, it will destroy the party. And look, I don't necessarily care about the Democrats. I'm going to be dumping Democrats on July 29th. But what I do care about is getting adequate representation, getting progressives in office, and if we can make the Democratic Party more representative of voters and constituents, more representatives of progressives and progressive ideals, then I think this is a win. So in the end, I think this is phenomenal news for anyone who's a Bernie Sanders supporter who was very much defrauded by the DNC, because we're taking a stand now. We're proving to the DNC and telling them that their corrupt tactics will not be tolerated, and we will fight back. We aren't going to fall in line. We won't just roll over and take it. We will fight against your corruption, and I absolutely love that this is happening. Kudos to the lawyers involved. I really hope this goes somewhere.